Okay, what is going on? So if I look different, look a bit funny, I am doing my treadmill right now. And I do want to do this video. It's been taking me a while to try to do this video. Can't really quite seem to get it right. And I really don't know where I want to go with my thoughts on this video about Mafia 3. You know, it's a game that's been out for 5 years. And I know they done a re-release for the Definitive Edition or Definitive Edit Edition. And I don't really know where to begin with Mafia 3. I don't know what to say about Mafia 3, that hasn't been said. I think it's probably just going to be a repeat. But I think to start, we're going to start with the first two original, Mafia games, Mafia 1 and 2 from the PS2 and 360. Now, I do have the original 2. I did play a little bit of Mafia 1 for the PS2. That one, it's not my favorite for the original because of the controls and the graphics. And it felt really more like a PS1 game that didn't age well. Now, I have not played the remakes or the remasters of Mafia 1 and 2. I do eventually want to because I'm curious with part 1. And I did play part 2. I did play part 2 for the 360. Part 2 was enjoyable. The only gripe with part 2 is that after you're done with the game, you don't get the free roam. You don't get the free roam. And you have a lot of things that are just left in the air, especially, what truly happened to Joe. And a lot of people think Joe is still alive from part 3, from what we see from Scaletta, I think his name, his driver, who Lincoln Clay meets. And it does look like him. So we definitely get to that end. Mafia 3, for it being 5 years old, has aged well. A lot of games, after being 5 years old, don't age so well. I know there's other GTA-esque Mafia type of games out there that probably didn't age well. I remember when the Godfather game came out, I played a little bit of it. And that really paved the way for the Mafia games as well. Because back then the graphics for the Godfather, the controls, were ahead of its time. It was an open world-esque GTA-esque game. I do know when it comes to aging, I'm not sure if it aged well. I know a lot of people said that it didn't. And I'm not surprised that it didn't age well. Vice City, San Andreas, those open world games, they aged well. I even say part 2 for the 360, for Mafia 2 for the 360 aged well. It did. Another, GTA-esque open world game, Red Dead Redemption 1, for it being 10 years old, when I played it a couple months ago, it did not age well. Graphics, controls, and story, it did not age well. That is a game that I can see getting a remaster, if not a reboot, as well. And I'm curious to know what new things can really be added in those, because I'm curious to know what stuff has been added in the remake remaster of part 1, just like in the remake and remaster of part 2 of Mafia 2. Do you get to free roam afterwards? Are there more stuff added into it since it's getting transported and got transported to a newer console, which is the PS4? Even if you look at GTA 5, for example, I don't know how well the original GTA 5 age for it being 7 years old back when it came out for the 360. I do know, I feel like it aged well for the PS4 version because the PS4 version did offer a bit more to it. And I think a lot of people did enjoy the PS4 version. You know, just like when it comes time for the PS5 games to come out, with Red Dead Redemption 1, no, not 1, but 2. You know, with Red Dead Redemption 2 and GTA 5 being re-releases, you know, what more can you introduce to those things? You know, and I talked about that before in a previous video or so, talking about the remasters before Life is Strange. You know, 1, 2, and Before the Storm. You know, they're getting remasters for the PS5 and PS4. And it's one of those things that are very curious, you know, like, what can they offer in those games that they can put in that makes people say, okay, I want to buy them. You know, I do know there are glitching issues with the remaster of 1 and 2, and you know what? That's to be expected, because if those who played the Batman Return to Arkham, you know, it had a bit of glitching, it had a bit of texture issues, and a little bit delay issues in both of the games, but the PS4 versions of those games do hold a lot more, and I have talked about those before on why the PS4 versions are just more better than the 360 versions of those games. So, Mafia 3 aged well. I say the next thing, which would be graphics. The graphics for Mafia 3, I think, are way more better than GTA 5. Yes, and to go with graphics, right? San Andreas, when that came out, the graphics were phenomenal. The graphics were ahead of its time back then. They really were. Now, I remember playing, and I do have San Andreas for the 360, but San Andreas for the 360, after playing it, felt more of a step down than a step up, because the 360 version had issues. And the PS2 version is the most superior version. And even if you go back and play the PS2 version of it, you could say the graphics, I kind of want to say that it's in between with aging. You know, it's either or ooh, you know. But back then, it was ahead of its time. I say the next thing as far as graphics go was the Scarface game for the PS2. Now, Scarface game is a fun game. The graphics for it, though, I'm going to be honest, the graphics, I feel like, just did not age well. But back then, when it came out, it was really, really phenomenal, you know, back then. Especially for, you know, when it was released. Now, see, I say the next thing in terms of graphics, that was groundbreaking. Grand Theft Auto Escape from Liberty City. Grand Theft Auto Escape from Liberty City. When I saw those graphics, I was blown away. I was completely blown away at that time. And I'm like, wow, like really? Like, I think we all were blown away. Now, I never played Red Dead Redemption 1 when it came out, though. But I heard for the graphics for that time were definitely something. And I think that's a bit of the problem sometimes. Again, you know, the graphics for Red Dead Redemption 1, you know, didn't quite age well. You know, if you go back and play Escape from Liberty City, yeah, the graphics did not age well now. I say the next groundbreaking thing for graphics was GTA 5 when it came out for the 360. And those graphics look so realistic that it was definitely something. But I'm curious for those that still play GTA 5 on the 360. You know, did the graphics age well for 7 years? Because the PS4 version, I think the graphics held up for the PS4 version very well. You know, even till now, there's definitely that. And then the next graphics for games that definitely age good. Now these two I'm about to name. They're a little bit open world, but not quite open world, which is The Last of Us 1 and 2. The graphics are phenomenal. And even one right now that I just thought about, Driver 3. Driver 3 is definitely an open world, definitely a GTS game. And Driver 3, for the graphics at the time, and I still haven't, I haven't played it in years, but the graphics for its time were so smooth, really nice. I'm like, wow, you know, like the graphics for it then was phenomenal. And I'm curious, you know, for those that have a PS2 like I do, you know, do you still play Driver 3? And if so, do you think Driver 3 aged good? Do you think it aged good? Do you think the graphics aged good? And then the next thing for graphics that blown us all away is, of course, Red Dead Redemption 2. Wow. What can you say more about that? So, the graphics for Mafia 3, I do think they are better than Grand Theft Auto 5. And I think they're still on par, and I think they are on par, and I think Hangar 12 or Hangar 13 can give Rockstar a run for their money when it comes to graphics, just because of Mafia 3. You know, I think Mafia 3 graphics are up there and definitely on par with RDR2 graphics. Controls for Mafia 3, controls handle well. You know, they handle pretty smooth. They handle very well. Not really too much to say about that. So, I'll say the next thing for Mafia 3, which I feel like is a letdown, is going to be places that you want to go back and to explore. And the Definitive Edition gives us more things to explore while playing those missions, while playing the side missions, but we can't go back to these places. And Vice City, San Andreas gave you those options to explore after you played the game or after you played through certain missions. You know, you got to be able to go into places even before certain things can get activated. So, you know, Mafia 3 really took that away, which sucked, because there were some places I would have loved to explore. And this is when we get into discussion of the DLCs, right? Or some iconic areas in Mafia 3, for example, the Marcano's club or mansion area. I would have liked to explore that. Or the hotel where we throw the guy through the window. That's an iconic setting. Or trying to go back into that bank vault area from which we escaped from. You know, that's one I wish we could explore again. You know, what else? Just like when it comes to DLCs, right? From it. The first DLC that I played was definitely the better one, which was No Stones Left Unturned. And No Stones Left Unturned, and I'm going to come back to that topic for that, but, you know, we got to explore outside of the map into another country, you know, and that's one of the things that really become a letdown when it comes to areas like that, because we like them so much, we want to explore it after we're done with the game. You know, like RDR2, you know, we got to go to another country, Guarma, but they took it away from us after we beat the game, so we can't go back to Guarma. And we all would have loved to go back to Guarma, and I hope that's one thing when that game gets transferred over to the PS5, they need to add that in, because it's going onto a bigger engine. They can expand the map more, and they could add, you know, Mexico, because everybody wants to go into Mexico in that game. Everybody wants to go back into Guarma. You know, those are two opportunities that can really resell that game. And if they don't do it, it is a missed chance. It is a missed opportunity. You know, I mean, Mafia 3, I would have loved to have went back to that island, but it's a missed opportunity. Same thing when it came to the Batman games. You know, there are areas that you wanted to go back to. For example, Arkham City, you wish you could have went back to Arkham Asylum, you know? Or when it came to Arkham Knight, you wanted to go back to Arkham City, Arkham Asylum, and to that island where the Ferris wheel is. You know, you wanted to go back to those areas. And we just couldn't. The same thing when it comes to Ace Chemicals. Or Wayne Manor into the Batcave. You know, those are areas that we wanted to go back to, and I really felt there were missed opportunities because they wouldn't let us go back to them. So, you know, things like that can definitely take away from a game. Things like that can drive people away because you want to be able to have areas that are iconic to be able for players to go back to in a future game to be able to explore it. You know, the same thing when it came to the DLC Signs of the Times. You know, I would have liked to go back to that school, but we couldn't. And there was only one way in, but we couldn't be able to go back there. So, you know, there was definitely that. Now, when it comes to the DLCs, the weakest DLC is Faster Baby. I think Faster Baby could have been scrapped and replaced, but if you wanted to keep it, you could have took out the racing part of that whole aspect and kept it how it was, but have Roxy, or whatever her name was, as a playable character to help play beside Lincoln just to see what her skill set was. You know, I do believe that was a missed opportunity. I think it would have been a good DLC if they would have kept it like that and just took out the racing. I say the next DLC, it's not the weakest, but it felt out of place, and that was Sign of the Times, because it really had nothing to do with the mafia aspect of the South. That had more so with the religion, voodooism, and black magic of the South. And I lived down south, and stuff like that took place in that DLC does still happen till this day down south. It's just that you don't hear about it as often anymore. I feel like it was out of place for Lincoln, and I feel like you could have had two different playable characters for that mission, and the two playable characters that fit perfectly for that DLC could have been Father James and Cassandra, because one's a priest and one studies in voodooism. And it really would have been cool to see what their skill sets are. It really could have been cool to see their skill sets, because we know one served in World War II, and we know another one came up during the end of the slavery days, pretty much. And it would have been really cool to see what their skill sets could have offered in that. Now, of course, within that, you have like another side mission, which goes almost into a main mission itself, which was refabricating Sammy's bar, and I like that we got to be able to do that. I say the strongest DLC is, of course, No Stones Left Unturned, and that's a really good DLC. And it gives an idea for other games that can be related to Mafia universe of those games, but have them be its own separate thing as well, kind of spin-offs. And I like that we got to play with a partner, which was David, Donovan, the CIA agent. And just seeing the skills that he offers is so great. And one thing I started thinking about is Lincoln Clay in the wrong game after playing No Stones Left Unturned, because I would like for Hangar 13, and this is when you get the idea of a spinoff for that, Hangar 13 to play as Donovan in his time during the service, while switching to a CIA agent to hunt down his best friends and play him over across seas in China and throughout the countries while he's hunting down the person that we have to kill in No Stones Left Unturned. I think that would really be a great thing to do for Hangar 13 to do that. The same thing when we play as Lincoln Clay during his time in Vietnam and seeing his team up in the missions that he went on over there with Donovan while being part of the CIA. I think that would really be good. I know that would be great to open world war games like that. That expand and spin-offs outside of the Mafia universe. I think that would really be good. Or they could create a war game separated from that, just with Donovan and Lincoln Clay in it, and have it play similar to No Stones Left Unturned, with it being open world base, it playing like that GTA-esque style with very good graphics. And that's why I say I feel like after playing that DLC, that Lincoln Clay is in the wrong game just because of that. So I think those are about my ideas for Mafia 3. And I like that they added into the Definitive Edition that was part of the demo back then, where you could put somebody in the trunk of the car. I like that we get to do that. I really do. And I know a lot of us want Mafia 4, but the problem with Mafia 4, I don't see it tying into Mafia 3. I can see it tying into the first two, but not into Mafia 3, because Mafia 3 has alternate endings. This is the problem where I think we should get a remake of Mafia 3 with a solid ending. An ending that makes sense, an ending that can tie into Mafia 4. Now, I think the way for that to tie that in is only that way, is for a remake of Mafia 3, because I can see Mafia 4 taking place in the 70s. Taking place in the 70s. And I think where they're going through the timelines of certain era decades, the Mafia during its high peak. Like we got the 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s, and I think the 1970s should take place in either California or Chicago. Why? Because Chicago is the home of the original gangland for the Mafia in that regard, even in terms of street violence, in terms of the gangs today. I always said Chicago's the original home of the gangland. And I can see California, Chicago being in the 70s in Mafia 4, and then in Mafia 5 can take place in the 80s. Now, the downfall for the Mafia was in the 90s, so the 90s for Mafia 6, right, can be the downfall of Mafia, and the 90s, and seeing that and playing as an agent taking the Mafia families definitely down. Now, do I think certain things should be answered in Mafia 4 if we are introduced to certain characters again, like Lincoln Clay, Valito, and Joe? Do I feel like if they ask us in the beginning, how did you play through certain events in Mafia 3 in order for something to get answered in Mafia 4? And I feel like Valito, with him taking over the casino, could build up enough money once he found out Joe was alive and Joe was a driver, and then have that reunion between Joe and Lincoln Clay, and come to find out that's his father. I feel like we can definitely get that in the Mafia universe, because everybody likes Valito. So it only makes sense if they give us that opportunity option in the beginning of Mafia 4. Because I would like to see Valito. Of course, he's going to be a bit older. Joe's going to be older. And I think everything else will go from there. But that's what I feel, which would make sense. So Mafia 3 is a good game. Does it have its issues? Absolutely, it does have its issues. I feel like we could have signed a bonus racket with the bonus town that we had to go into in Faster Baby, and I feel like the Bayou could have been signed as well. It could have been separated 3 parts if they wanted with that. So, these are just my thoughts and me rambling a bit about Mafia 3. For those that see this video, do you guys like Mafia 3? Do you guys think it's the best one out of the 3 right now, out of the trilogy? And what do you think of Mafia 3 with stuff that I covered? Let me know. But with that being said, I'm out. Peace.